Hello and welcome to my third video looking at these fantastic Penguin specials. So in this final video we're going to be having a look at numbers 200 to about 270, as well as my early wartime American Penguin specials, and also some offshoots, some lovely hardbacks that were produced for the aircraft recognition series, which were like extra special Penguin specials. So that's going to be the subject of today's video. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Okay then, so here we start the third and final look at my Penguin specials, and I've got some really nice books to show you in this one. So we're now well and truly, this is special number 201, we are well and truly in the 1960s with this particular one, which is number 1963. The dates on these jump around a little bit because Penguin went back if a number wasn't used, and well, they used the number basically. So this is the first one. So this is, most of these have got a mixture with like artwork and a bit of picture on the front, and focus on the one topic, which is in this one, Britain's exclusion from Europe. This is quite topical at the moment. When General de Gaulle finally said no. Well, there you go. So 201. 202 is the Algerian problem. It's got a glossy cover, so some of them do, some of them don't, but you'll see that the style is very similar. 203, this is Madison Avenue, and I used to have two copies of this one, in fact, but this is looking at, I believe, the advertising agencies in New York. Fantastic. And that's 189, really nice copy of that one. But I believe there is a version of that with a Sense edition because it was also exported in the early 60s. 204 is Asia in the Balance, Michael Edwards. And 205 is Guilty Land by Patrick van Redensburg. I'm not sure what that one's about. Let's see. It's looking at apartheid, yeah, in South Africa. So that makes sense. Number 205. 206 is by Bertrand Russell and Has Man a Future? Quite a famous title, this one. 1961. And these really do resonate the 60s as a decade, and are absolutely fascinating. As fascinating as the 1940s ones, in my opinion. This was sort of a sub-series within the Penguin specials called Britain in the 60s, and they are absolutely fantastic. I really love them. They're highly recommended, and each one looks at different bits of England. This one's got a little writing as a prophet. Make your hobby a career. Yeah, this one by Raymond Williams. So been previously published in Penguin. 1962, a nice copy of that one. And then this one, another Britain in the 60s. This is number 208. This is looking at education. Education for tomorrow. And then we've got 209. So Berlin, looking at, it's obviously the Berlin Wall. Hostage for the West. Really nice, nice jackets on these, really of the period. That's why they're so great. 210, looking at Britain in the 60s again, the family and marriage. And they would often feature sort of downtrodden, old, like squalor accommodation in these in their book jackets. That's not a particularly good condition one, but some of these I've had a real job tracking them down. Some of the 40s ones are easier to get than these ones from the 1960s, and I can only put that down to how well they actually sold at the time. This is 211. This is Britain in the 60s again, looking at housing. Obviously it was a very important subject back then. And then 212 is sanctions against South cover by Germani Faciti. So there you go. Number 212. 213, The Common Sense About Smoking. So got a couple of young kids there smoking. 4 authors on their take on it. So obviously smoking was far, far, far more common than it is today, back then. 214 is a look at the United Nations. Piety, Myth and Truth. 214, and this is October 1962. 215, Torture, Cancer of Democracy. France and Algeria, 1954 to 1962. So a really, really specialised subject in that one. 216, the A6 murder. This is quite nice with the road sign on the spine there, the A6 murder. This was a famous series of murders, and they got the chap, and this was another report, a bit like Lady Chatterley's Lever, the report of what happened in court surrounding that case. So yes, the A6 murder. That's 216. So this is another one which is very much of the time, Britain in the 60s, Crown and the Establishment. This has got a cover design by Bruce Robertson. Sort of like that sort of pop art style that was around at this point and starting to become more popular as the 60s went on. And this is 1963, so it's give you an idea of where we're at. New Cold War, Moscow versus Pekin, Special 218. .219 is another one, Britain in the 60s, and this one looking at vagrancy. Fantastic still there on the front cover. A photograph by Roger Main, it says. Really nice. As I said, no subject in these was taboo. Bertrand Russell again, An Armed Victory, Special 220. These covers becoming more and more elaborate as time is going on. 221 by Rex Malik, What's Wrong with British Industry? Interesting book. 222. So you've got Great Britain or Little England, or even Little Britain. And this is, you may recognise the cover artist as Ralph Steadman, quite a famous cartoonist and caricaturist. And just get the next stack out, because there's many to go through, as you can imagine. So this is number 223. So this is The Other America, Poverty in the United States. So quite an interesting jacket. You can sort of see this, the stripes from the American flag. It's 223. 224. So we got another election boom looming, a bit like the last one, where Penguin published not a manifesto, but they got an eminent politician to write the case for Conservative and Labour. I don't think they did a Liberal one this time, so there's 224 and 225, but they didn't do one for the Liberal Party that year. Another interesting title and resonant today, 226, a nuclear disaster. Photo of an atom bomb going off there. And obviously this was very much on people's minds. That was 1964. Just the sort of thing that would be published as a Penguin special. This one here, 227, so this is looking at Cuba. Castro on the front cover there. Very thick book, this one. Interesting book on Castro. All highly, highly topical at this time. This is B format. You see it's much, much larger, and this is a look at traffic in towns. And this is the shortened edition of the Buchanan Report. So You can see why this is in B format. The quality of paper is much better, and it's highly illustrated as well. And I can't imagine this was a cheap book. It published by Penguin in association with HMSO, so the Stationer's Office. 1964 was when it was first published. I don't see, unfortunately, a cover price, because I would imagine that's, oh yes I do, 10 shillings and 6. That was a fortune back then. That was an expensive book, and I wonder if that makes that one quite tough to find these days. I wonder. 229, The Intelligent Woman's Guide to Atomic Radiation. Well, is it The Intelligent Woman's Guide because it's written by a woman? I don't know, but wowee, look at that. Bruce Robertson again as the cover designer. Really sort of striking, that one, isn't it? And as I said, just to compare, this is 3 and 6 compared to that last one, which was 10 and 6. So what a huge difference. Now, this is a question on people's lips recently, isn't it? In Britain, at least. What's wrong with Parliament? Well, what's right with Parliament, you could say. But this is how they were looking at it in 1964. Then we got what's wrong with the hospitals. Once again, has anything changed? You know, the NHS certainly feeling the pinch these days, and desperately need more funding, which doesn't seem to be coming through from the government. My wife worked for the NHS for many years, and it's a real sad situation that they're in at the moment. 231, 232, the police. So a traditional view of the policeman there, sort of helping a young couple of children there, but also pulling away some sort of protester or something on the other side. Designed by Bruce Robertson again, so obviously Penguin had a proper art and design department, and some of these young artists and designers were working for them at this time, and this is starting to come through with the main list. 233, so The Last Confucian, Vietnam. Penguin did a few books on Vietnam. I don't have them all, unfortunately. There's a really nice photography one which I haven't got, which is like on my wants list, but we'll get to that eventually. That's 1963. Why Liberal? So this is actually, so they did the Why Conservative, Why Labour. The Why Liberal obviously was delayed. Maybe it was used a later number, because as I said, we are looking at these numerically. So that could be why we didn't see that one first time round. So this is interesting. So this is 236, Cyprus from Rebellion to Civil War, Legacy of Strife. Very striking cover, photograph cover on that one. That's what makes these so good, it really does. This one looking at Harold Wilson, selected speeches. So the New Britain, Labour's plan outlined by Harold Wilson. Selected speeches from 1964 with a photograph cover. One thing is worth noting, and this is a typical example, when these were published, the front cover was that beautiful, sort of gorgeous tomato red, and it's so susceptible to fading. So I would say about half of these 60s titles that I've got have, to some degree, got faded spines, because red is the most susceptible colour to fade. This is not perhaps the best copy, but it's still worth a look. Future of the Welfare State. All these were issues of the man on the street of the time. Another entry in the Britain in the 60s series, which is The Other England. Once again, this is such an evocative cover. So you've got a traditional English street, you've got some old housing there, you've got some sheep walking across the road, so, and an old delivery van there. So I guess this is looking at England outside the cities. Number 239. Bit of a tatty old copy, that one, but still happy to have it. Southeast Asia in Turmoil, number 240. And this is 1965, so right in the mid-60s now. (241) The Crisis of India, Ronald Seagal. 242, the Challoner case. Don't know much about that. Evidently it looks like a true crime title again. Yeah, it looks like a true crime thing. So these are like early true crime books, a bit like that A6 murder from earlier on. And number 243 rather, the breakup of the Soviet Empire in Eastern Europe. Quite a nice copy of that one. Cover design by George Dolby. I'm just going to need to pause it there to get the next lot ready, so one sec. Okay, so I made a little bit more room now, so get the next lot out. So this is number 245, which is Immigration and Race in British Politics. So I'm missing number 244, which is 117 days, and I'll pop a picture of that one in. And then we have this one, 245. So once again, this is look at immigration and race in British politics, a very topical subject even today. Then we've got number 246, which is Vietnam. So this is Penguin's first look at the Vietnam conflict. History, documents and opinion on a major world crisis. So obviously Vietnam was already in full swing by then, and this is an incredibly deep look at the outline and origins of that war. That's number 246, and that was published in April 1966. 247 is a new look at British economic policy, an all white cover. I suppose that would look lovely, but mine's got a little bit of writing on it. There's that one there from 1965. Number 248, is there any choice? Britain must join Europe. How ironic that these 60s titles are being shown today, literally on the eve of a Brexit deal, for us to actually leave Europe 50 years later. Blimey, how topical. And then we've got 249 now. So that was 248. 249 is a look at drugs, medical, psychological and social facts. Titles like this seem to be in short supply, and are consequently quite rare. Penguin did a few books looking at drugs and things, and it's a collectible subject, as weird as that might sound. Some of the rarest vintage paperbacks in existence are drug-related ones, and this one here is looking at hallucinogens, LSD, control of drugs, heroin. It's a subject that is highly collectible in the world of books. It's weird, isn't it? But there you go. Number 250, looking at Indonesia. So you'd think for the 250th special they might publish something a bit more interesting than a look at Indonesia, but there you go. What can you say? That's interesting. So this is got a Singapore, Malaysia stamp in the bottom. I do often wonder where some of these how some of these books managed to get to the UK. If only you could touch a book and see its history. So this is another look at Vietnam. So from Yalta to Vietnam, number 251, American foreign policy in the Cold War. Once again, this is another scarce book. Anything Vietnam related is quite a sought after subject by historians today. And this is a particularly nice one, also expensive again at 10 and 6. So that wouldn't have been a cheap book in its day. 1967 is here now, and that sort of comes out with this sort of cover design: Arms Without Empire, British Defence in Modern War, in the Modern World. 252. And we're coming near to the end of where I collect Penguin specials, which is up to about 69, 70. I've got a couple of ISBN ones, but not many. 253, The Incompatibles, Trade Union, Militancy and the Consensus. Very black cover, that one. Designed by Patrick McCreath. He did a few for Penguin. 254, A Suitable Case for Treatment. Same cover designer. What to Do About the Balance of Payments. And you notice these ones now, this is 6 shillings. So the price is slowly creeping up and up, as you would expect. 255 is that Vietnam photograph book that I've not actually got. So it's on my wants list to find a nice copy. So I'll pop a photograph of that great Vietnam book in now. Then 256 is paying for roads. So the economics of traffic congestion. So this is just looking at Britain's travel and roads. 257, radical discrimination in England. A Penguin special based on the PEP report, whatever that was. 258, after the common market. Douglas J. A better alternative for Britain. Yet another Vietnam book, which is 259. Vietnam by Mary McCarthy. This is another classic book. Not particularly long. So you should be able to find a copy of this if you do want it without too much trouble. Once again, worth tracking this one down. Her look at the Vietnam War, which was still raging at this point. And she was an on-the-ground reporter in Saigon. So it's 259. 260 was only released in America, and that's why the draft. That's the case for the Volunteer Army. So that was a US only release, which once again I've not got that one. 261, from Commonwealth to the Common Market. 1968. 262 is May Day Manifesto, 1968. Raymond Williams again, we've seen his name a few times. 263 is Israel and the Arabs. Looking at the Six-Day War of 1967. 264 is Science and Technology in Europe. So, you know, you'd sort of think that this is the sort of book that would have been covered in a Pelican, but it wasn't, and that's just sometimes how these things go, isn't it? 265, The Politics of Harold Wilson. Got a lovely cartoon cover by Mel Kalman. I've got whole Penguin books by that illustrator, and they're really fun. And that's number 265. So we're almost there. So one more pause till I get the next lot. Okay, so I'm back, and this is the very last run of British Penguin specials that I've got leading up to the end of the 1960s. So this one, number 266, Student Power. And this is published in 1969. And we got 267, which is Matters of Principle, Labour's Last Chance, another political title here. 268, so this is Obsolete Communism, the Left-Wing Alternative by Cohn-Bendit. So another look at communism here. Quite an interesting title. Nice copy, that one. That was 268. Now this is 269, which is looking at the French Revolution of 1968 with photographs. And this one's a bit of a rough old copy, this one, but quite interesting all the same. Let's pop that down there. Now 270, so The Devolution of Power by J.P. Mackintosh. Bruce Robertson again doing the front jacket in that nice style. 271 and 272 I haven't got. 273 is this one, which is the Atlantic Commonwealth. Quite a nice copy of that one. 274, Rights and Wrongs, Essays on Human Rights, June 1969. 275 is Europe after de Gaulle, Working Towards the United States of Europe. 275. 276 is a bit of a classic and also a bit of a pricey one. You'll recognise this is the Biafra story by Frederick Forsyth. Frederick Forsyth is one of his very earliest works. At the time he was a reporter, but he went on to become a best-selling thriller writer, highly regarded, and this is his first work. So this is like a Frederick Forsyth original. On the strength of that, this one's quite a collectible Penguin special. So that's it on my 276 is my very last numbered one. I've got a few that came out just a little bit later after Penguin moved away from their own series numbering and just used ISBNs. So this is just an odd one. We're looking at a note from 1970, Poverty, The Forgotten Englishman. This one here, Greek Tragedy. I think this would have worked out at about number 277, something like that. Very tail end of the 1960s anyway, the Greek Tragedy. And the last of the UK ones I've got is Invasion of the Moon, 1969. Story of Apollo 11, which is another absolutely cracking one with nice illustrations. So that's all my UK Penguin specials. I've now got some really early and interesting American ones, which I shall just pause and I'll dig those out now. Okay, so this is the earliest American Penguin special that I've got, and this is in actual fact the second one that was published. The first one's called New Ways of War. This is the second one, which is Russia by Bernard Pears, and this obviously had a UK equivalent. This was published in April 1944, and it came out as special number 81. And you'll notice that it was published by Penguin Books America, but in conjunction with the Infantry Journal, and they published loads of books during the war for American servicemen, and that's where this one comes from. They are quite hard to find in Britain these days, and I don't have many, but what I've got I'm absolutely delighted to have, because they are, as I said, they're quite scarce. So that's number 81. Now this one I've actually got a couple of copies of, and this is special 212. The numbering by no means was consecutive. They only released about 40 or 50 titles in the series, of which I've got a dozen or so. But this is quite interesting. So this is number 212. So Psychology for the Fighting Man. Now this one's, although it's hammered, the reason I've kept it is because it's got this on, which is R-0252, which means it was sent to Regiment 252, and that would have been, this would have literally been sent to an American regiment somewhere in the world. 1943, this one. This is a much better copy. I don't know if it's still if it's a first edition or not. Let's have a look. Now this is the second edition, so once again, as you know, with sort of rare books, I like to have a couple of versions in the collection if they're particularly interesting. Next one is special 219, which is Steinbeck's The Moon is Down, and this got absolutely beautiful cover. This one was published in September 1943 originally. Absolutely lovely, this one of my real favourites. I do like Steinbeck a lot, and I'm delighted to have this one in my collection. Yeah, this is the first from November 1943. With the covers look like cardboard, so much, not like the British ones of the time, which were like see-through paper, as you'll recall. This one is special 222. So this is looking at the British Navy's air arm, which is quite interesting in itself. Beautifully illustrated, that one. That's quite nice, and these are so rare, particularly in Britain. 1944. Then we've got 223, They Were Expendable. Another scarce one. I mean, they're all of these are scarce in Britain. You don't often see them. This is a short history of the Army and Navy. This is 224 with 24 maps. Bit of silverfish damage on that one. And this is number 227, which is This is the Navy. 13 Stirring True Stories of America's New and Powerful Navy. Little anthology. And we've got number 238, so we're jumping a little bit now to this one called Storm, which is actually a novel. Very tatty old copy, that one, but once again, just glad to have it until a better one comes along. Now, this is a little theme. Now, I was very fortunate to buy some books that were belonging to a soldier who was actually killed in the Pacific campaign, and all of his possessions, including his books, which were never eventually sent to him because he died before he got to the Pacific, were kept by his parents, and those belongings, including like his uniform and things like that, were eventually sold on when his parents passed away. And I ended up buying his books, and there was not many, but there was about a dozen or so, which I'll show you now, and they're all related to the Pacific campaign, and this was one of them. And because he never actually got to read them, they're virtually mint and unread. So that was the last of the regular Penguin Fighting Forces specials. But then there are some more, so pop those over there. And these all came from the same place, the same source. So this is Infantry Journal, which I imagine, I guess his parents or the actual soldier must have subscribed to. And these were sent to him, his home address. But as I said, he never got to receive them because he was killed before he got to the Pacific. But there's this one here, Report on India. You can see that's just published solely by the Infantry Journal. This one here, Soldiers in the Philippines. You see they're absolutely mint, these, absolutely mint. I'm very pleased to have these in my collection. Reptiles of the Pacific World. So these are all things that soldiers could have had. If they'd have had this book in their pocket, it would be the sort of thing that would have given them a bit of comfort and things to do when they had time on their hands. Plant Life of the Pacific World. Native Peoples. These are all Infantry Journal Fighting Forces titles. This one, the US Marines on Iwo Jima. This, I believe, was almost used as a propaganda tool by the American Army. They only reported what they wanted to report, of course. But very, very interesting all the same. A couple more. I mean, as I said, these are absolutely immaculate considering they're 80 years old almost. A lot of these now, 75, 80 years old. Burma Surgeon. This is another one which isn't Penguin related or anything, but it's what to do after you come back after the war, so back home. It's an early Bantam paperback, this one. It's still got a beautiful laminate on it. This is October 1948, so it's a bit later, that one. And then these two, which are slightly larger in format, Studies on War, a Fighting Forces series. When did these get published? 1943. And one more, which is this one, another one in that sort of larger, slightly larger format. Sergeant Terry Bull, His Ideas of War and Fighting in General. I imagine this is the same sort of period, 1943. So that's the American specials and related that I've got. Now, I've also got one more thing which is fantastic, and I look forward to showing you these. So if you remember, through all the first two videos, we had various books on aircraft recognition. Well, Penguin, and they were massive sales. Well, what Penguin did, they released these rather nice oblong hardbacks by R.A. Semple-Sneath again. We recognise the author, and these are aircraft recognition books. So this is Aircraft of the United States, Volume 1, and these were published during the war in a lovely oblong hardback form. It's a 1945, so in actual fact quite late, this one. And they were published as part of the Q series. So that was like miscellaneous books that didn't really fit in with a particular series. These could easily have been specials, but because of their price and format, they were almost like a premium book, certainly premium for the time that they were published. So you had Aircraft of the United States Volume 1, you had and Aircraft of the United States Volume 2. They all follow a very similar format. Then you had British Aircraft. So British Aircraft Volume 1 is this one. And we'll just see if it was published around the same sort of time. This one's 1944. So it looks like they were annually or biannual. So rather than being aircraft recognitions with silhouettes, this is actually proper photographs of the actual planes in question, as well as the silhouettes. So a bit more expanded from a regular special. And then you had Aircraft Recognition Volume 2, which this one's a little bit tatty. It looks like it's got a period review in, which I often find in books like this. This was 1944 as well. Same sort of thing, a second book of British aircraft recognition. And yeah, it looks like there's a little book on, a little clipping on aviation there, which sort of fits in with this book. And that concludes my look at all the Penguin wartime specials. So there you go. I hope you like that third and final video looking at these fantastic Penguin specials. Certainly they are a great fun series to collect, and I'm looking forward to filling in those last couple of gaps in my collection. If you have enjoyed the video, do please give it a thumbs up, and do consider subscribing for regular vintage Penguin and vintage paperback content going forward. Thanks once again for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.